Today I'm going to be installing TCI suspension in the front of my 1969 Mustang. If you haven't seen the disassembly of the car, you can check out the previous videos. But where I'm at is I've got the car down to a shell. Up in the front of the car here, you'll see I fabbed up a couple of wheels. This was made from some drops I had laying around the shop. I welded them up and bolted them where the bumper typically goes. And what this did was it gave me a way to get the car in and out of the garage. I didn't want to be confined to the lift the entire project, especially when you start cutting, because there's going to be debris and stuff flying all over the shop, and I just didn't want that cleanup. Now, cutting in the engine compartment and around the firewall near the passenger compartment, I'm going to be throwing a lot of sparks, and the carpet was still in the car. It comes out here. What I did was I just pulled the seats out, which are 4 bolts from the bottom side on each end, and then also the shifter bezel for the front, which locks down the front carpet. That came out, which allowed me to pull that front carpet and the back carpet. The cut portion of this is all done with a plasma cutter. This is a Hypertherm 45XP, which works through this like butter. I'm being careful to make sure I'm not cutting anything on the frame that shouldn't be removed. I want all of the structural support of that factory front frame rail that I can keep. But the lower control arms are my first target, and I just work it slow. Case comes to visit, and the shop got pretty smoky. And then I move up to the tower and work my way around the tower. It was pretty clear by the time I got this first one out that this was an outside job, not something that should be done in the shop, because it was making quite the mess. Got a whole lot of space now, open. I went ahead and left myself some room here so when I come back through, I can trim this up like they talked about in the instructions. I'm getting a little squirrely here with the camera. There we go. All right, so looking at this, I've got this rough cut on the outside. I'm gonna come back through and clean it up with the grinder. I've still got to get the rest of these brackets out, but I think I'm probably better off doing that with a spot weld cutter rather than roughing it with the plasma. We're making some headway here. So the retainers I had for these wheels in the front were actually my daughter's. They came off her wagon, and she made me give them back. So I put some vice grips on it, which worked in a pinch, pun intended, and that let the wheels stay on while I rolled this thing out and continued this project outside. My German Shepherd's pretty excited about this project too. If anyone knows where I can get a pair of shaded safety glasses that fit a dog, let me know. Well, I sped it up a little bit to save some time, but a lot more space in the engine compartment. Everything's cut out. I got the cross braces out. I got the mounts for the radiator free. The old sway bar brackets are out. Everything's rough cut on the bottom. I'm still gonna take and hit all of these little spots with the spot cutter. I've started on these ones, but I've got a bunch more spot welds here to get out. And once those are out, I should get a pretty good idea of what I've got for final dimensions, and I will be able to grind this clean and make it look a whole lot nicer. Well, here's a shot of those shock towers and those lower control arm pickups that are cut off the car. Next up is drilling out all of the spot welds that hold these brackets on. This part's a tedious process, and it never fails. As you drill them, you're going to miss some. It's just a lot of hammering and chiseling and looking for tension spots where you've missed one and drilling it. Some people might get them all in one shot, but I wasn't that person. I will say I edited a lot of this out because it's not very exciting stuff, and there's a lot of time in just drilling and chiseling. If you have a pneumatic chisel, hands down, that's the ticket. I was being stubborn. I started by hand and was making progress, so I just kept pushing on it. But I'm not going to lie, the entire time I was doing this, I was thinking about that air chisel sitting in the drawer. On the passenger side, same thing, sped up. And you'll see eventually I break. I get that air chisel, and it's night and day difference. With the brackets removed, it was on to grinding. I did a lot of shaping on these openings. You'll see me use the cutoff wheel, but all in all, there's just a lot of grinding to be done on this. Nobody really talks about it, and it's probably the least fun part. So with some of this ground, we can see the progress on this side. Over here is the rough cut and all the spot welds that haven't been ground yet. And over here, you can see where I've ground it. Some of these spot welds I went a little deep on it, but it's all cleaned up. And we've got the gap here that the TCI paperwork talks about. Now, some of the other videos I've seen, people have pretty wide gaps here. I was very careful to make this come across very smooth, and everything's nice and tight, and fortunately nothing distorted too bad. There is part of a bracket down here I've got to grind. It's going to be more laying on my back and grinding. Fun. But with this lined up, let me double check it here one more time. That's right on the hole where it needs to be. The outside plate for the reinforcement is going to lay right here, and again line up with this hole. And when I do that, it's tough to see with the camera, I've got a real nice reveal. And I'll be careful to make sure that this is all parallel. I've got a little bit more material to take up here to clean it up, but this is all fitting very well. And the final piece of the puzzle is the blocking for the bottom, the bracing. And again, this one will line up with the hole. I've Got a little bit of a rock point I'm going to have to sort out. Some of the bottom of this was damaged from people jacking it over the years, so I'll probably dolly that out a bit and grind any of the hot spots. And then once everything's set, I can start tacking this up. But this side's real close. This side's not close at all. I broke out the stripper on this side, and you get what you pay for with strippers. This was a decent one, and it ate through that paint way faster than the wire wheel. So this is something I'll come back to. I want to prime all this later with an epoxy primer, but for now, before I weld this, I'm going to come through and hit everything with a self-etching weld-through primer. This is just to protect between the layers. I didn't get as far on this one. All this is going to get stripped, but for now, for the suspension, I need to seal up any of this metal that's going to be behind the reinforcements. Another thing that I've done is I've taken this phosphorus coating, this rust cutter, and I've sprayed any of the rusty spots. You can see it here. That was rust a moment ago. And what this does is it's kind of like OSPO. It's phosphoric acid. It neutralizes the rust and it turns it black. I've done this spot earlier so that you can paint over it and it stops it from spreading. It's just an insurance policy. I've done it with some other places on the car. The floor pans are still wet with it, but this was all rust and it's starting to convert. These are just some places where feet have sat, where my feet were wet, and it's kind of started a little surface rust. But now that everything's where it is, I'll go ahead and hit this with some primer just to seal it and can start welding. The more I thought about it, I ended up welding this first before using the primer. That way I could go through and grind it and then prime everything at once. And since I was doing this back to back, it wasn't like there was going to be any surface rust in between. For the frame rails, I had just enough argon left in my TIG tank to TIG weld it. I wanted to TIG weld more, but I ran out of gas and I didn't want to go to the store, so this frame rail here gets TIGged, and then pretty much the rest of the project I used MIG welding. TIG welding on new metal always looks so good, but on this old rusty metal that has a lot of oxidation on the underside in between layers, you kind of take what you can get, especially since it's all going to be ground down at the end. Welded up and ground flat, it's time to go ahead and install these boxing plates. These are all the components for the driver's side. These were all in great shape when I got them, but because the kit sat for a little while, I had some rust on it, so I had to clean it up a little bit. But the way this is going to go is, here's the outside, and it's designed to go inside of a locating hole. TCI's done a great job of engineering this so you don't have to do a ton of measuring, and it's real snug where it lands. The inside is going to be similar. It drops right in. Now this one has a little bit of play. It won't matter as long as I set both of them the same. So I'm gonna put both of them, I think, forward for the best relief. And then I'll have the same profile on both sides. One of the most important parts is this hole right here, because that's the one that's gonna locate the other members of this suspension. Where this lands dictates where everything else lands, and this one's nice and snug. And then another important part, I'll pull this off my hat and make sure I'm looking at the same thing that y'all are. Another important part is this profile right here. This has to have the same reveal all the way across. It's very important because all of the other suspension components come off of that alignment. So I'll pay close attention to that. Even though it's lined up, I'm gonna put a bunch of clamps on it. And then the bottom plate is gonna catch that hole right down there. I'll have to do some trimming here for clearance. That way the shock members can have the space that they need. But I'll put it on time lapse and you can watch me weld this up. So rather than grinding all of this material off, goodbye, for the seam here, what I did was I rough cut it, and I'm using my Milwaukee bandsaw just to take as much material off as I can before I actually get into closing these two together. I've still got a good bit. You can see the template is the existing plate from the bottom. I've still got a good bit to cut off here, but it'll make my life a lot easier removing it with this, and it's a lot cleaner in the shop as well. Well, I got this side all welded up. I've just got a lot of grinding to radius everything over. I've run into something that people online have hit. I don't know if you see this with the camera I've got set up, but the cross member is too wide. So if I look up here, it barely even fits without the plates in place. In fact, I can't even get it in there without the plates in place. So I've got some grinding to do yet, but while I wait for this to cool, I'll draw some measurements and kind of show you what I'm working with. I'm just shy of 27 1/4 with the plates, and I'm 27 1/2 without the plates. This is at 27 1/2, so this is not going to fit even before the plates. I think that this probably from the factory should have been at 27 1/4. I started to mark it and I started to cut it, but I wanted to show you, and hopefully you can see it, what I'm doing. Basically, I need to take 1/8 of an inch off both sides, and I'll bandsaw cut it so that I have the play that I need to fit in that opening where I need it to. So I'm ready to start mounting this cross member and these shock mounts. Something that I've noticed is from the factory, these have some welds and the grind marks are pretty crude. I cleaned up a lot of it. Even though it's going to be covered up and you won't see most of it, I still wanted it to look nice up under the car. I went ahead and primered all of this while it was off of the car. This is weld through primer. That way I can get in all the nooks and crannies and make sure I get good corrosion protection in these spots that are going to be tough to get to later. With the car up in the air, I used a leveling feet on the lift, and I've got everything set up true. I've got the level on there, and then to be sure, I've got this Johnson angle finder where I've set it up, and I've got the car set dead nut so everything's perfectly level. I'm gonna drill this hole through like the instructions show with the kit. I'll put the member behind it right here, just as a locator. That way I can find where the cross member needs to lie. And then with that angle finder, it'll allow me to set these uprights so that they're perfectly 90 degrees. And it's just gonna help everything remain true. We're all welded in. Now something I'm gonna have to address here, and I saw it earlier, is this mess. This is where that bracket was earlier. I'm definitely gonna cut all of this out, and I'll put a plate in there too. I'm worried that if I don't, as the suspension turns, it'll give it a weak point if that's not boxed. That's where the steering arm used to be. I don't know if you remember in the last video, but there was a drop link for the steering, and somebody stick welded that in there with a lot of porosity. Alright, so this next step here, I went ahead and drilled out this hole a little bigger for the locating hole. It was a little too tight, so I just used a 3/8 inch drill bit to open it up for my locator. Something that I've realized is when I set this up, there's a pretty decent gap here. I don't know if you can see it, but it gets worse as it comes down, which tells me I'm not totally flush here. And I believe why is I've got some contact points, and the primer's helping me here to see where it's hitting. These welds are a little bit proud of that edge, so before I can put this on, I need to take the grinder and just clean this up. And then if that doesn't do it, what I'll end up doing is radiusing this a little harder. That way I can get that as snug as I can. With everything welded up, I went ahead and did a test fit of these bolts that go through. And what I found was, because all of this is cut pretty tight, I don't know if they used a plasma instead of laser or what the situation is, the tolerances are a little off. So on this side, you can see it there. I took and filed it out a little bit with just a little deburring tool to allow for that clearance. I'll do this side as well, and then next I'm going to do these sway bar mounts. So for the sway bar mounts, I need to make a center line on it and then find my location of where these are going to meet up. And there's some measurements in the instruction install sheet. Shop's a mess right now, but they've got instructions on how to locate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mark in the center here, and then from there I'm going to pull 12 inches from that cross member, line it up with the center of the bracket, and that'll be the home for these. Well, I think that's gonna about wrap it up for this video. The cross members in, shock tower mounts, sway bar mounts, everything's locked in, welded up. All that's left for the TCI install is bolting up all of the bolt-ons. Lower control arm, upper control arm. I've got the shocks here. Here's a sneak peek at the brakes that are gonna go on the car. These are Wilwood 6 pistons and the spindles on the back side. That'll all be in the next video. Before I install all this, I'm also gonna sand this and powder coat it, which I'll include that in the next video also. I'll show you my process for powder coating parts. I've made a little oven. And on Marketplace today, I came across some wheels for 30 bucks for the pair. They broke these ones, but they'll be perfect for mock-up. I'll see if I can get some tires. This will show me what size I can run and what kind of clearance I've got in the front. And this is very similar to the wheels that I intend to run on the car. I'm looking at the Apex EC7s right now. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. You know I wasn't going to end it without trying to mock it up. It's been a long couple of days. Here's a little teaser of that suspension.